Good evening. A warm welcome to you. I acknowledge the presence of Our Excellency, the High Commissioner of Uganda here. Thank you for coming, man. And last week I got a message from China, from Patrick, saying that he has just done a similar presentation at the FCC in Beijing and would be liking to come and make a similar presentation about an affordable contraption to cope with pollution. Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Out of the 20 most polluted places on earth, more than a dozen of them are from India. So I readily agreed and invited Patrick, and he's China head of Smart Air, and he is India head of Smart Air here. Let me introduce Patrick, Paddy. He grew up in a small rural village in Wales, has a master's in aerospace engineering from Bristol, UK. After graduating, he went on to launch several social startups before moving to China in 2015 with an aim of solving some of China's big environmental and social challenges. He has been running Smart Air, a social enterprise dedicated to combating aerodynamics to design combating air pollution for the past 3 years. He uses his expertise in aerodynamics to design new, simple and effective air purifiers and his experience of the global landscape to increase air pollution awareness in countries across Asia. As an environmentalist, Paddy spends much of his time working on sustainability projects and speaking at environmental forums, as well as routinely participating in forums to promote social innovation and responsible business in China, the Philippines and India. Smart Air is a social enterprise that promotes DIY air filters as a low-cost solution to indoor particulate air pollution. Smart Air provides open source test data and hosts workshops across Asia to teach people how to protect themselves from air pollution. Since 2013, Smart Air has already held more than 330 workshops in as many cities in over 25 countries across Asia. Smart Air's simple solution has been covered in both traditional media and new media, including the BBC, Forbes, ABC Australia News, El Confidential, CNN Phoenix, Global Times, NDTV, etc., and covered by BBC Horizons when their reporter attended a workshop like this, recorded the DIY process, and developed an episode about pollution solutions. We also have with us Mr. Rathod, who has been educated in the Netherlands. He has been actively involved in promoting Smart Air in India. We are delighted to have you, both of you with us, gentlemen. I request Patrick to make your presentation, speak and tell us about what you're trying to do, how successful have you been, and what are your plans?
And thank you for giving us this platform today to talk about one of perhaps India and Delhi's biggest crises right now. So today I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Smart Air, what we do, and some of the simple ways people can protect themselves from air pollution. Let me start by saying I am not an expert in air pollution. So I grew up in Wales in the UK. I have a master's in aeronautical engineering. I moved to China in 2015 and I'm now the head of Smart Air in China. Daryash is the head of Smart Air in India. As we heard, he was
from Raipur, Chhattisgarh. So it's also one of the most WHO's most polluted cities list. I have a master's degree in microelectronics, Netherlands, and I joined Smarter back in 2017 because I was really excited, and really motivated by the work what Smarter was doing. So it has been very fascinating.
Telling you the story of how Smart Air got started. And it started back in 2012 with this guy here, Thomas, who was the original, you could say the founder of Smart Air, or the idea of DIY air purifiers. He was living in Beijing when the apocalypse struck. So this is what Beijing looked like back in 2013. And just to put that into context, here's a satellite image of Beijing. You can't even see Beijing. So that was a period when Beijing was really, really polluted around 5 years ago. To kind of put that into some perspective, how does that compare with Delhi's air? So back in 2013, we all knew Beijing had its apocalypse. And this is a graph comparing Beijing in blue and Delhi in green. And we can see that actually Delhi's air pollution spikes, which is every winter, are actually much, much more severe than even Beijing. So Delhi has its own apocalypse. And I'll just let you all know now, so all of this data is analysed and published by Smarter, so feel free to take photos, use this data as you see. So this is all available from Smarter. So we can see that Delhi's air pollution spikes are much, much worse than even Beijing. And here's a trend over the past 3 years, showing that in orange, whilst Beijing's air pollution levels have been decreasing, Delhi's annual air pollution levels, PM2.5 levels, have actually been increasing. So we can see that Beijing is improving, but Delhi is getting more and more polluted. How about other cities across India? So this is showing Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai, and Hyderabad, and we can see that they all feature similar peaks during the winter periods. We can see Kolkata is the second most polluted in this chart, followed by Mumbai, Hyderabad, and then Chennai. And in telling you the story of how Smart Air got started. And it started back in 2012 with this guy here, Thomas, who was the original, you could say the founder of Smart Air, or the idea of DIY air purifiers. He was living in Beijing when the apocalypse struck. So this is what Beijing looked like back in 2013. And just to put that into context, here's a satellite image of Beijing. You can't even see Beijing. So that was a period when Beijing was really, really polluted around 5 years ago. To kind of put that into some perspective, how does that compare with Delhi's air? So back in 2013, we all knew Beijing had its apocalypse. And this is a graph comparing Beijing in blue and Delhi in green. And we can see that actually Delhi's air pollution spikes, which is every winter, are actually much, much more severe than even Beijing. So Delhi has its own apocalypse. And I'll just let you all know now, so all of this data is analysed and published by Smarter, so feel free to take photos, use this data as you see. So this is all available from Smarter. So we can see that Delhi's air pollution spikes are much, much worse than even Beijing. And here's a trend over the past 3 years, showing that in orange, whilst Beijing's air pollution levels have been decreasing, Delhi's annual air pollution levels, PM2.5 levels, have actually been increasing. So we can see that Beijing is improving, but Delhi is getting more and more polluted. How about other cities across India? So this is showing Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai, and Hyderabad, and we can see that they all feature similar peaks during the winter periods. We can see Kolkata is the second most polluted in this chart, followed by Mumbai, Hyderabad, and then Chennai. And in terms of increasing in levels of pollution or staying there. It killed people in one of 3 ways. Does anyone have any suggestions or ideas on how air pollution might kill? Lung disease. So a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind, because we're breathing in this thing, is a lung disease or a lung cancer. That only makes up around 15% of deaths caused by air pollution. And another 15% is caused by bronchitis and emphysema, heart attacks and strokes. So the next time you hear someone had a stroke or had a heart attack, think it might well be because of this PM2.5 that people are breathing. Tom, having figured out that air pollution was a problem and that it was killing us, decided to do a bit of research and find out if air purifiers can actually work in cleaning the air pollution and helping us. So, first of all, what is air pollution? If we look at this chart here, we can see kind of in the middle we've got smog, tobacco smoke, and soot. We've lost part of the the axis on here. I don't know if we can move this slightly or not. But that's around the PM 0.5 to 2.5 diameter size. So these are particles that are the width of about 20 times smaller than the width of your hand, the diameter of your hand. So these are really, really small particles that we breathe in, can get into our bloodstream, and then cause all sorts of problems. So that's why many of the deaths caused by air pollution are related to the heart, is because they can get into the bloodstream and cause problems there. So basically what we're looking at is, can air purifiers work at filtering out smog? And to answer that question, we looked to a study done by this guy, Dr. Richard Sincere, who was living in Beijing at the time of the apocalypse. And he had with him a laser particle counter so that he could actually measure the air pollution. And he did some really, really simple tests at the start. He measured the air pollution levels before turning on the purifier, and then again after turning on the purifier. And what he found over multiple tests and multiple days was that every time he turned on the purifier, the particle count, the pollution levels dropped in the room. So, surprise, surprise, the air purifiers were working. And Tom at this point was over the moon and thought, great, I'll just buy myself an air purifier. There's another picture. So he went online and he went to look at buying himself an air purifier. And actually he found out that they would cost him around 1 lakh rupees, which is a crazy amount of money for someone who was studying on a Fulbright scholarship in Beijing at the time. So put that another way, I mean, one of these machines is 80,000 rupees. You'll need one for the living room, one for the bedroom, and you also need to buy replacement filters. So he was looking at spending a total of over 2 lakh rupees just to get clean air in his home. Not something a student could afford, not something most of us can afford. So he wanted to get to the bottom of this. How do purifiers work? Or put it another way, what's in this magic box that costs $1,000? What makes this thing so amazing that it needs to cost $1,000? And actually, if you open it up, you'll see it's quite simple. In reality, it's just a fan and what's called a HEPA filter. So the fan blows air through the HEPA filter, which filters out the air pollution. Now, the HEPA filter is the real workhorse of any air purifier. We all know how a fan works. The HEPA filter is what captures PM 2.5. What are HEPA filters? Well, they're just made up of polyester fibers, just like the ones you get in your clothes, matted into a random fiber which captures the air pollution. They can capture up to 99% of those really, really small 0.3 micron particles. So they can capture things like PM 2.5, pollen, viruses, and bacteria. So having seen how great these things are, they can capture 99% of pollution. They're really, really effective at what they do. They must be some kind of expensive technology, right? We would have thought so, but actually, in fact, they're not. So they were invented over 70 years ago by the US government during the Manhattan Project. So they invented these to filter out actually radioactive particles. And since they were invented so long ago by the government, there's not one company who has a patent on them. And they're really, really simple and been used for a long time. Knowing this, Tom had a fan at home. He decided to pick a filter off the online store, and he made his very own first DIY purifier. That doesn't look like much. He tied it together with a tape measure, but that was his first DIY purifier. He did some simple tests at the start to see whether or not it was working. He took a picture of the filter at week 0, and then again after 5 weeks. And it was pretty clear that this filter was doing something. Remember, this is the air inside Tom's bedroom, next to his face as he was sleeping. This isn't the outside air, this is inside the bedroom. So we can see that it's capturing something, and Tom was pretty happy about this, that it wasn't in his lungs, all this black, it was in the filter. But, this is a very rudimentary test, it's not telling us whether or not it's actually working. So what you need to do to find out is to go out and buy a laser particle counter yourself. We've actually got one here. I'm going to, Darius, jump up and do a demo for us now. So we've actually got a laser particle counter here, just like the one.
Just a second.
On there. On the left-hand side, you've got the small roughly PM 2.5 particles, and on the right-hand side, the PM 10 particle count. What's the number right now?
It's 36,000, the smallest particles.
So 36,000. That's roughly a PM 2.5 AQI of about 360, which which is pretty high. That's 36 times the WHO recommended limit. So even in here,
What is the general threshold?
is 10 micrograms. And we're breathing roughly 360 micrograms right now. And I'm sure outside it's probably 400 to 500. So we're better in here than we are outside, but we're still nowhere near healthy. Numbers on
It's
there.
coming out from here
Yeah.
or it is there?
You see the particle count going down. You see the number on the right, it's already 0. And the number on the left, which was around 36,000, slowly going down. It's now around 17, slowly it's going down. What's the picture? Excuse me, sir.
So it's capturing over 99% of all of those tiny particles. So effectively 100%. So it's gone from 36,000, the air going through, it's dirty, the filter is capturing all of those particles and it's only clean air coming out. 2.5, yeah. So
What's the second total?
it's PM10. So that's a slightly larger particle size. So if direct takes it away now, we'll see the numbers. What's happening to the numbers?
It's going up. It's already 20,000, 25,000. It's back to 33,000 and it's going up.
Without this?
Yeah, so it's like the air inside is in this room, the air quality.
Yeah, so this is the air.
This is, they are sucking in and giving.
Yeah, this is giving the clean air.
Simple we need to answer, right? Which is that enough to clean the air in the entire room? We know the air next to the filter is clean, but how about the air in the entire room? And to answer this question, again, we did another test where this time we put the particle counter on the other side of the room, away from the filter. There's Tom in bed. And we plotted the air pollution levels, first of all over the course of an hour, and we saw that as soon as we turned on the purifier, even the pollution levels on the other side of the room started to go down. So that's over the course of an hour. What happens if we look at the course of 9 hours? We see that over the course of 9 hours, the pollution levels drop from, that's an AQI, you can see in the purple range, right down to within the green kind of safe limit range. And again, Tom's a nerd, so he did test after test after test. So these graphs are for the slightly larger, the PM10 particle count, but we know that the most dangerous are the PM2.5, so the number on the left is roughly similar to that. So can this HEPA filter also capture those up? Now if we look at the graphs for the same data, for the 0.5 micron, the PM2.5, we'll see that the graphs follow exactly the same trends. So the HEPA filter can even capture out the really, really small particles. Again, being a nerd, Tom did test after test after test, which all confirmed the same theory, that turning on the fan and the HEPA filter cleaned the air in the entire room. So on average, how much of the pollution did this filter remove from the room? It removed 84% of the small PM2.5 particles and 92% of the slightly larger PM10 particles. Now you might be wondering, well that's quite a small tabletop fan. What happens if you use a slightly larger fan? And at this point, Tom, along with another of our co-founders, Anna, went online and bought every single fan they could find to test and see if they could find a fan that was more powerful. And in the end, we came up with what we call the Cannon, which is an even stronger fan which can blow even more air through the filter and hence purify a bigger space. So we call it the Cannon for two reasons. First of all, it kind of looks a bit like a cannon. And secondly, it really does an amazing job of purifying out the air. You can see in the course of an hour, it's already purified the air. This is in a 15 square meter room, 150 square foot room in Beijing. We have a cannon here.
Where the pollution is deposited, when it's sucking, where it is deposited?
So where does the pollution go? It goes into the HEPA filter. So this is a HEPA filter used for 1 week.
It goes inside this.
Yeah, in Delhi. So this is the air pollution in Delhi. And if we look at a HEPA filter that was used for 3 months, this is what it looks like.
So how do you clean it? It needs to be cleaned. How do you
You have to change it.
So you actually can't clean HEPA filters. This is one problem we're looking at ways to try and solve. The only thing you can do right now is throw them away, which isn't ideal.
This is changed,
You have to change it.
replaced,
Yeah, replace.
cannot be cleaned.
No, we've done tests trying to clean these, seeing if there are ways to clean it, but it doesn't work. We've tried washing, we've tried vacuuming, and scrubbing, it doesn't work. But so this is 3 months in Delhi air, and you can see This is your lungs if you're not wearing a mask or using a purifier.
How different is this from the HVAC filters which we have?
If you have a good HVAC installation, it will probably have either HEPA filters or MERV filters, which are exactly the same principle. They're amount of fibers that filter out the air pollution in the air.
Yeah,
Should we save questions for the end, and I'll run through this. So we've seen these two simple DIY purifiers. They're just a fan and filter, but how do they compare to the more expensive purifiers? At this point, Tom begged, borrowed, and not quite stole some of these other purifiers from some friends. So we managed to get hold of a Blue Air, a Philips, and an IQAir, and test them in the same room using the same particle counter, using the same testing method over the same period of time. And what we found, I'll show you now, is we already know that the DIY removed 84% of the really small PM2.5 particles and 92% of the larger particles. The Blue Air did slightly better, capturing 90 and 96%. The Philips did around the same again. The IQAir roughly the same, and then the Canon the same. So we can see just from this graph that the DIY purifiers perform pretty much just as well as those more expensive air purifiers. How much does it cost? Things get interesting when we take that last graph and we plot the costs on there. And we can see that we can immediately see two things. DIY purifiers are much, much cheaper than other purifiers. Why is that? It's because they're just a fan and a filter. There's nothing fancy, there's nothing high-tech in there. Secondly, if we ignore the DIY purifiers and just focus on the three branded purifiers here, we can see that there's a large price variation in there. And paying more money doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more clean air. So the IQAir there is about twice the price of the Blue Air, but it's not necessarily going to give you more clean air. So what we learned here was that price and effectiveness don't necessarily go together. And actually you can get clean air for a really, really low cost. Another way of putting this is one IQAir is 800,000 rupees. That's the equivalent of 200 DIYs. Don't forget you need to replace the HEPA filter, which is replacing one of those on the IQAir is the equivalent of another 50 DIY air purifiers. So it's quite expensive. We took all of this data and we put it online onto a blog which Tom originally called Particle Counting. It's online now, smarterfilters.com/data. And we essentially wanted to share this information with people, showing them that you don't have to spend a lot of money, you can make your own air purifier. And we actually started running workshops. So the first workshop we ever ran was in Beijing with the Beijing Energy Network, where 20 people signed up and they got to make their own air purifier. Here's some pictures of what the workshops look like, where people actually got to make their own air purifier. And here are some photos from the workshop we've done here in India doing the same thing, where people here's two schools. Which schools are these?
The first school was Jamnagar on the bottom. The first one is Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Manchana.
So we essentially wanted to show more and more people that they can make an air purifier themselves. And actually, the more and more we did this, the more and more people came to us and said, you know what, I'm lazy, I don't want to make it, I don't know which fan to buy, I don't know where to get a HEPA filter. Can you not just sell this to me? And that's when Smart Air actually founded as a social enterprise. So Smart Air was founded as a social enterprise in 2013 with two missions. First of all, to provide clean air in an affordable way through filters and masks, and secondly, to provide education and research on air pollution. We're now operating in 4 countries in Asia, and we have teams. So Tom is based in the US, he's a professor in the US, and he works part-time on Smart Air. And we've got 4 teams in India, Mongolia, China, and the Philippines. We've shipped over 30,000 DIYs in China, and what are we up to now in India?
Close to 5,000.
Close to 5,000 DIY purifiers all across India now. So here are some of the most commonly asked questions about the DIYs. First of all, how big of a room can they clean? The simple DIY 1.1 here can clean around 150 square feet, and the Canon can clean around 250 square feet. How loud is it? Well, the DIY is roughly the same as the Philips or Blue Air on high, so it's not much louder. And then how often should I change the filters? This is a question a lot of people have, not just about DIY purifiers, but every purifier. And what's wrong with the standard numbers that you get from most companies? Well, they might tell you, that's 8 months, but is that in Delhi or is that in Switzerland? Is that 8 months using it in Beijing or Delhi? Is that running it 24 hours a day or just 8 hours a day? So they don't give you a very clear answer. So we wanted to get to the bottom of how long these filters actually last, and we ran longevity tests again in a room in Beijing, where we turned on the DIY for 8 hours a day, every day. We can see here's one example of the graph. We turned on the purifier, the numbers went immediately dropped straight down, and then turned it off again after 8 hours, and the numbers went back up. We have 200 days of test data, so if anyone feels like diving into that, you can jump online to see all of this test data. And what we found was that over the course of around 100 days, the effectiveness stayed around the same, and then around 100 to 130 days, there was a slight drop in effectiveness, and then the filter got worse and worse. So we generally recommend changing the filter around 140 days or 1,000 hours. So at least these type of filters can last around 1,000 hours. So that's inside the home. We've talked generally just about air purifiers now. What about outside the home? When we're outside, we generally think about wearing masks. And a lot of people don't believe in masks, or they don't want to wear masks, generally because people can be skeptical about them. So people often have two questions. First of all, there's no way that this mask can capture, I brought one along here, there's no way that this mask can capture those really, really small PM2.5 particles. How can this capture those small particles? To answer that question, we can look to a study done with a diesel generator, whereby a group of scientists stuck a pipe to a diesel generator, stuck a mask on the end of the pipe, and then had a particle counter to measure the air pollution particles coming out of the mask. Now this particle counter can measure down to 0.007 microns. How small is that? If we go back to the graph we were looking at, the chart we were looking at the start, we can see that that's down to the size of viruses. So this is really, really small. This particle counter can measure down to that. And we can see the results here that with nothing on the end of the pipe, nothing was getting filtered out. A cotton handkerchief filtered out around 30% of the air pollution. A surgical mask did surprisingly well. It got 80% of those really, really tiny PM 0.007 particles. Cycling masks did very well, and then some kind of more industrial masks did pretty well at filtering out those tiny particles. So to answer the first question is yes, masks can filter out those tiny particles. Second doubt a lot of people have is, well, once you're wearing a mask, all the air pollution just leaks in around the side and through the nose. It doesn't fit well, so it's not going to do anything anyway. And to answer that question, we need to do what's called a fit test. So this is Dr. Richard Sincere, who did this test in Beijing. We've also got a photo of Daryash, who did this test a few months ago in Mumbai. And the way this works is that you have a machine, the blue machine down at the bottom with two pipes. One pipe that's inside the mask that measures the air pollution inside the mask, and then one pipe that's outside the mask that measures the air pollution. And Daryash tested a lot of masks. How many masks?
25 masks.
25 different masks using this machine, as well as some kids masks. There were some kids who came along to the testing lab and did these tests. And we wanted to see how well they perform when you're actually wearing them. We can see the results here. Essentially, the majority of the masks did very, very well at removing the air pollution, even when you're wearing them. Most of them got over 95% of the particles. One that did probably the worst is this surgical mask, which only got 50%, which we can imagine the air is going to be leaking around the surgical mask. But that's actually surprisingly well when you think about it. This surgical mask, which costs only a few rupees, can even filter out 50% of the pollutants. So if it's 400 outside, you could be breathing 200 for something that's just a few rupees. And it's something that's very, very easy to pick up. So a lot of people say, oh, you suggest you don't wear a surgical mask. Well, I would say, if you have no other choice, it's better than nothing. If you forgot your mask, or you don't have the money, or you lost it, use a surgical mask, because it's at least doing something. But the majority of the masks here got over 99%. These are generally kind of industrial masks or masks with valves. If we do what we did with the air purifiers and plot the cost on top of that, we'll see almost exactly the same trend as we did for air purifiers. But cost and effectiveness don't necessarily go together. If you pay more for your mask, you're not necessarily going to get more clean air. One example here is the Volt mask, that's 2,000 rupees, but it's giving only 88% clean air. Whereas something that's perhaps the Venus or the 3M that are around 100 rupees are giving you 99% clean air. So based on that, some of the masks that we stock are this Venus, which captures over 99% of the pollutant. It has a valve and is around 150 rupees. And then another slightly less effective 97.6% mask, which costs only 80 rupees. And if you want something even cheaper again, there's a filter TT which costs just 25 rupees. So in conclusion, masks do work, they are effective. So when you're outside, you can wear a mask and it will protect you. Here are the 4 most important things that I've learned over the past 4 years working in air pollution. First of all, a lot of people say, you know, indoor air just comes from the outside, which means inside must be just as polluted as the outside. We had a friend of Smart Air, Kai, who looks a little bit like Van Gogh. I don't know if you can see the resemblance there. And he wanted to know, should he be working out indoors or should he be working out outdoors? To answer this question, we took the Daidos particle counter around 10 spots in Shanghai. We've also done this study in Delhi with the same results. And we tested the indoor air and the outdoor air in 10 different locations. And if we take 100 as the kind of the baseline for outdoor air, it's at 100%, we'll see that the majority of the indoor places tested were cleaner. The one outlier here is at 115. We can't quite read it, but that's a restaurant. Probably because the restaurant they were cooking, and cooking also pollutes, creates PM2.5. So this red on here, red on the right-hand side, shows the average of the 10 sites, and we see that the indoor air is generally 57% of the outdoor air. So if outdoor is 400, indoor is probably going to be around 200. So if we measure today, indoor is around 360, we're probably talking outdoor is probably around 700 right now here, which is yeah, pretty polluted. So based on this data, we can see that generally it's best to work out indoors. It's slightly better than outdoors. Sit inside at restaurants and cafes. But if you really do want to work outdoors, here's some further analysis that we did here at Smart Air, which shows that this is the pollution levels during 24 hours. So the numbers at the bottom are starting at midnight going up to 11 p.m. And over the course of 3 years, we plotted the average pollution levels throughout the course of a day. We can see that actually pollution levels tend to drop slightly around 2 p.m. until about 7 p.m. So that's actually the part of the day when the pollution levels are at their lowest. So if you really do want to go jogging outside, that's probably the time to do it. Also remember to close your windows and doors, because that's what's letting in the air pollution. There are some exceptions to sitting indoors if someone is smoking, or if someone is cooking like we saw in that restaurant, or again if there's been some recent remodeling, and I'll get to this later on. Secondly, I hear people say, you need to run your air purifier when you're not at home. Here's one website, purifier website, saying yes, you need to run it 24 hours a day. We wanted to get to the bottom of that. Do you actually need to run your purifier 24 hours a day? Because when you're running it, you're using up the lifespan of your filter, so is it necessary? We did tests over 4 days in Beijing when someone was living there, just to simulate a real-world environment. And we turned on the purifier in intervals, and what we saw is when you turn on the purifier, this is one 60-minute period, we'll see, as people are moving around, they're generating more and more pollution, which they're kicking up pollution from the ground. We'll see that over an average of 4 days, that 10 minutes after turning on the air purifier, the pollution levels in the room were down to 50%, the outdoor levels. And then within 20 minutes, they were around 75%. So the pollution levels were dropping very, very quickly after turning on the purifier, which says you don't really need to leave it on when you're not at home. You get home, you can turn it on, and within about 20 minutes or so, pollution levels indoors will be much, much better. Thirdly, people say, I want to turn it off when I'm sleeping because purifiers can be noisy, and a lot of us don't want to hear the noise, so we would want to turn it off when we sleep. Again, we did tests over the course of 6 days, this time with nobody at home, and we set the Canon on auto. And here's the results over the 6 days. This is the first day. You can see when the Canon was turned on, pollution levels dropped in the room, and then when it was turned off after 2 hours, the pollution levels went back up. And the same results over the course of the 6 days. The purifier was turned on, off, on, off, on, off. Now the general trend here is going up. Does anyone have any ideas why it's going up? Over the course of the 6 days, the pollution levels were going up. That was because the outdoor air was getting worse over the course of the 6 days. And because indoor air is roughly 50% of outdoor air, the pollution levels, the general pollution levels indoors were also increasing. Let's focus in on the first period here, and we'll see that when you turn the Canon off, the pollution levels rise really, really quickly. If we look at the average of this over the course of 6 days, you'll see that after 15 minutes, the pollution levels indoors were back up to 50%, the original levels, and then 80 minutes, they're back up to 100%. So this is saying that if you turn your purifier off, the pollution levels in your home are going to rise straight away. That's because pollution is constantly leaking in under the door, through your windows. And the leakier your house is, the more quickly that air pollution is going to come in. So we recommend that you keep your air purifier on at night. I mentioned earlier that you might not want to work out inside if you've had recent remodeling or furniture. That's because of another kind of pollutant, which are VOCs or formaldehyde. So these come from things like paints, wood, new carpets, these kind of things. If you know that the smell of a new car, that smell is actually VOCs coming from the plastics, which are also harmful to our body. How can we sort out, how can we purify VOCs? We can use what's called a carbon filter. So we've got one on here. This is just activated charcoal, which absorbs the VOCs and then stops them going out into the air. But again, we wanted to know, does this actually work to remove VOCs and things like formaldehyde? And we ran a test in Beijing where we got a tub of formaldehyde, fairly dangerous test we did, and put it into a rice cooker and turned it on. Here's Anna running this test with a pretty intensive mask on there. We did a control test where we released formaldehyde into the room and we just turned on the fan, no carbon filter. We saw that the pollution levels in the room went up and they didn't go down. Whereas if we put the carbon filter on the Canon, we saw that within the course of about 20 minutes, the formaldehyde levels in the room were going down. So this is pretty clear that activated carbon does work to remove formaldehyde. So what does it do? It targets certain gases and chemicals, can also remove smells, but it doesn't capture your PM2.5. So if you want to capture both, you need a HEPA filter and a carbon filter. Use it if you've had recent remodeling done, if you've got smells or new furniture in your house, or if you've got smokers at home. So that's the end of the talk today. I'll just like to finish on the note that clean air isn't a luxury, everyone should be able to afford it. And I hope you guys can help spread this message that everyone can actually afford and is capable of.
This contraption is doing in India. What are the chances? What else can you do to make sure more people buy?
As you mentioned before that 14 out of 20 cities are most polluted cities in India, in the world in fact. So problem is like lack of awareness. If you see there is like awareness is like it's well spread in Delhi. Reason being it's a national capital is always in the news. But we need like to raise awareness. That's where Smarter comes in. We have been hosting our workshops, not just in Delhi, but in different tier 2 cities like Jaipur. We have been to Bangalore, Kolkata, and we did more and more workshops. Once we raise awareness, people would become aware. They would know that how to protect their health. So that's what the role of Smarter comes in, and we are slowly and gradually building that, doing more and more workshops. And I guess platform like this would definitely help us spread.
You want to buy it, how much does it cost? Can you order online? Can you give some information about these things so that people will be sure? And if they want to buy more of these things to last in a year or something, and can one order them online?
So we have a website smartairfilters.com. Where if somebody wants to buy an air purifier, they can directly purchase from us. You can directly come to our shop. We can show around. We have a very nice office.
What is the cost?
Sorry.
That
Yeah. So the cost of DR 1.1 is 3,300 now, and the Canon is 6,500. So we sell it online. If you want to come to office, visit, like see that you got a really nice office, you can give us a call too. You're more than welcome. You can see around and buy purifiers directly from us, or you can always order online. We ship it all across India.
Also for people, we have people who come to the office who maybe perhaps can't afford 3,300, 3,300 rupees. And what we say to them is if you have a fan at home, just pick up a HEPA filter. So these cost 1,300. Again, very simple, so they don't need to be expensive. And people will take these home and strap them to their own fan.
How will this cost? It costs 1,000.
1,300.
And it can last 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours.
1,000.
Yeah.
And are they eco-friendly after you finish using them? Can you junk them or do they do any damage to environment and stuff or burn it? Or
We are finding different ways to decompose it, like eco-friendly way. So surely, like in coming time, we'll come up with a good solution so that it's eco-friendly.
Right now,
So as of now, you don't have any solution
right now
for
there
the
is.
waste management.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a real problem. It's a problem
So this, how long this lasts, this one?
1,000
hours if you use.
1,000 hours. After that it is thrown away.
Yeah.
This is a big
In our room, where we stay, we install this. So, how much time this room air will be purified?
So the graphs and the data I showed, it was within the course of around 1 to 2 hours, the air in your room will be
1 or 2 hours.
purified. Yeah.
So you operate this for 1 or 2 hours a day.
I suggest you can jump onto our website, we have all this data on there as well, explaining exactly how to operate it. And you should keep it on when you're sleeping, because if you turn it off,
Keep
the
it
air.
on while sleeping.
Yeah,
That means 7 hours here. Keep it on.
yeah, or whenever you're at home.
As
Yeah.
long as you are at home, you should turn it on.
Because the air is circulating around the clock, right, everywhere. So if you are indoors, I suppose, when you are in, then you put it on. When you are out, you put it out. But when you are sleeping, I think you should keep it on.
Keep it on for 7 hours.
That's right.
7 to 8 hours.
Yeah. Any questions?
Did I hear it right?
Use the microphone, please.
I presume that your friend did not design the filter. Yeah? Are they very similar to the ones you find at Home Depot or something like that?
Yeah, so this HEPA filter, the material is made in many countries around the world, China, South Korea, America, and the material is very simple, and all you essentially need to do is fold it. And what we did is we checked about 20 to 30 different manufacturers when we got started, and we found one that was the most reliable and effective, and chose them. But in essence, to answer your question, yes, it's all the same. It's all, HEPA filters are graded by how much air pollution they can remove. You have H11, 12, 13. And as long as your HEPA filter meets that grade, it can be called a HEPA filter. And it's the same for every factory, for every brand. So if you see the filters in a Dyson or in a Philips or in a Sharp, a lot of them will probably be made in the same factory, or at least the material, the original material will come from the same factory. And then just,
I mean, usually they cost around $10, you know, like $8 to $10.
Yeah.
I mean, since most of it is manufactured in China, shouldn't the price be much lower if you're importing it from China?
you're talking about the $10 from Home Depot. Yeah, so those aren't HEPA filters, those are MERV filters. So slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between those filters.
There's a difference between MERV and HEPA, but you're right. I mean, one of the main costs for us is the shipping and the importing costs, and we've worked to find local suppliers. We found one supplier in Bangalore to make these filters, because obviously it can be much more effective and better for the environment to make them locally. But we have some difficulties with the supply, so we get some made in India and some made in China.
Where do you manufacture this small machine?
This machine is made in China.
And you have any facility in India?
We don't have factories in India, we are just manufacture filters in India, not the fans. Yeah.
Is just a fabric or is it a fabric?
It's essentially the same as your polyester fabric in your jogging shorts or your running clothes, that kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing. I'll pass these around to you guys. Could do. I mean, the cotton handkerchief was removing around, what was it, 50% of the average. So,
Kind of money they spend, it will become a success when they can wash this and reuse it, at least for a year or something like that.
definitely, yeah.
The moment that is done, this will sell like hotcakes. So right now, people are thinking, oh my God, every 3 months I have to spend 1,300 rupees or whatever. You know, that is a constraint. But that is, somebody has to come up with an idea. You know, like air conditioners, filters and all that, they're washed and used. But if we can make this also washable and reusable, then, you know, Indians will buy these pieces. And
Why Indians?
Everywhere.
Europeans will buy.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's a challenge that, probably one of the biggest challenges is
Because no one is so foolish. Everyone is intelligent. Indians are intelligent, no doubt, but Europeans are foolish.
Good for them, it's okay. See, one of the main causes of pollution in Delhi is construction dust. And Delhi is a dusty city in any case. Now this dust has been there all along. So is it a new, it doesn't seem to be a new problem. Perhaps you have just recognized it. And if we could cope with it all along, why can't we cope with it now?
Do you want to answer the question about the sources?
So there are
Sources of
several sources for air pollution in Delhi, one of which you mentioned is construction. But there are other sources like industrial waste, like jute burning, automobile. One of the most, I would say, major constituent of PM 2.5, that is local burning. You must have seen like
Yes.
local burning, like garbage burning, stubble burning. So all these different reason contributes to air pollution in Delhi. Now also like Delhi is like a landlocked place. So when the temperature drops, the air becomes dense. So the PM 2.10 tends to hang around in the atmosphere. So to answer your question, I mean, this is not like one constituent. There are like different reasons, like automobile, everything. If you see in 1990s, I think the best thing which was done was like having a catalytic converters in the automobile. So that reduced, that was a big step. And secondly, like moving from diesel engine to CNG. So that was a good reason. So still automobile or like this transportation it's a major source of
Because of further vehicles on the road, perhaps more crop burning around Delhi, that brings in a lot of the pollution. So the sources are increasing. And then to answer the question as well, we've been coping with it all along. We even need this solution. I mean, we hear everyone on the streets coughing, right? We hear people coughing. So people are coping with it, but you can tell that people's bodies are trying to fight it.
This is you claim that this is the latest technology.
No. This technology is 70 years old. It was invented 70 years ago. No patent. 1940s, yeah. Almost.
There are more advanced technologies.
This is the thing. In the past 70 years, there's not been anything that's more cost-effective than this. People have tried to come up with ideas of catalysts and things like that, but this is still ultimately the best thing out there.
This solves only the indoor pollution. But when you go out, anything for masks or
Partly for the nostrils.
Yeah. So something like these masks. Some people do have those things that you stick up in
really
your
no,
but then you're just breathing through your mouth. So.
Patrick, you were in China, Beijing. So, what actually they did
to reduce the pollution in the city as a whole. We are discussing about the indoor pollutions, but here it's stepped out, you can't avoid it. So what is that they have done and which we can copy here to reduce it?
That's a really good question, and actually, many governments are now trying to learn from the Chinese government in what they did, because they managed to reduce pollution levels so quickly. This problem is generally going to be a 20 to 30 year problem that we're not going to be able to solve instantly, but the Chinese government somehow managed to do it very quickly. What they did around Beijing, there's a lot of factories, a lot of steelwork factories, so they moved those factories to other areas, so they moved the pollution to other areas. Something else they did was a lot of people were burning coal for heating, so they've transformed all of the coal burners to gas and geothermal, so those are the two main methods. They've also, China has the highest standards for cars, so in terms of car emissions, so they've implemented all of these to, not just in the Beijing area, but the area around Beijing to limit the air pollution in those areas. So they've done it, nobody thought it was going to happen this
Do
quickly.
you think that if you reduce the number of tandoors, which is very common in Delhi and around, if you reduce the number of tandoors, will improve the...
Yeah, that would certainly help. As I mentioned, like one of the causes was like indoor burning or those things. So that would definitely help in curbing the air pollution in Delhi. At least we are like curbing or like eliminating one of the sources. So that actually we are reducing your like pollution level. If we can curb at least indoor burning or like traditional cooking or something, the tandoor what you're mentioning.
But then I'm left with a subsidiary question which is not so important. I was told that things like this can absorb some of the indoor. So I went actually yesterday. I spent 10,000 rupees buying plants for my sitting room, and I wish I could take you there and show you the sitting room and ask you precisely how many of the things and the fans and the things you think could, my sitting room. It's not mine. It's government owned. This room and the next one, just one fan with that thing tied in front would be enough.
A lot of people think that plants are the solution to removing pollution. And I think the reason people talk about this is because there was a study done by NASA around 40 years ago, where they put plants in a vacuum and saw whether or not they removed pollutants. And they did remove some of them, but what they were removing was the VOCs, so the formaldehyde. But what they can't remove is the PM2.5, which is the biggest problem here in Delhi. So I would definitely recommend you to get plants because they're going to look nice in your home and give you a nicer environment, but they're not going to help with the PM2.5. Then in terms of your space, how many purifiers do you need? Well, you can use a simple calculation. This is good for 250 square feet, and that's for 150, so you can work out how big the space is. There's another kind of an even bigger purifier, which is something that I designed last year. That white box there again. All it is an even bigger fan and an even bigger filter, and that can cover 900 square feet.
And you're talking about 3,300 rupees, 3,000.
3,000.
Not 330,000.
No, 3300.
Come on.
$50, less than $50.
Where are you?
Where am I?
Yeah, where are we someone
It's in.
So we're based in Lagos, right? You should. It's close to Qutub Minar.
Near Qutub Minar. Near Qutub Minar.
Qutub Minar.
Give your card to our...
Sure, I'll do that. But we have got few.
We brought a few.
Yeah.
They have brought some units here at my suggestion. You can buy them off them right now, and they'll take money by credit card. You can pay by credit card. Okay.
Yeah, we weren't going to, but Venkat insisted that we bring a few along.
Because I've been getting it since we put it out, an email and on our website. People have been asking, hello, we want to buy it, how much does it cost, where can we buy? So then I lined them up and said, why don't you bring some units in case after a demo, people might be encouraged to buy it, and that's how they brought them. Thank you for that. There are no more questions. I just want to, before asking Munish to propose a word of thanks, we want to give you a memento. This is what is this, specially designed to celebrate our 60th anniversary. Thank you very much for coming and educating us about how to cope with pollution.
Well, Paddy, what a way to go from Wales to Beijing and now Delhi, huh? And no, this was very informative and I think very educational for a lot of us. I think we, in the name of devices and contraptions being sold in the market by various manufacturers, we get carried away and think about, oh, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 rupees, and we feel that we are doing something very interesting, or as our friend said, maybe new technology. This is nothing new. It's been around there for ages, but of course, like Venkat said, we do wish that somebody can create this fabric that is washable and can be put to use again. And we do hope sometimes, somewhere in your research you include that as an assignment for yourselves.
Sure.
Provided the women are not the ones who work.
Agreed.
You never know, who might end up designing that or figuring that out before these guys. But this is very interesting, and it does make it very affordable. It does bring to the common man a solution, at least for indoors. And also thank you for sharing the outdoor details for us and answering some of those questions. I think it's very important for us to realize what really is it that the human being is doing to create pollution in our own environment. And while tandoors and some traditional ways of cooking, for a populated city like Delhi might be a problem, but it's the other stuff which creates a lot of pollution for cities like Delhi. I remember Los Angeles 20 years ago used to be so badly polluted. You could literally see this yellow cloud hang over the valley for days together. But they've cleaned it up, using just, coming up with stricter and tighter laws. So I think Delhi needs to learn like other cities, or India needs to learn like other cities. Whether it's firecrackers we don't burn, or we control our chimneys and stoves and whatever. But great learning. Thank you for stopping by and thank you for sharing this with us. I would definitely recommend buying something like this. And thank you friends for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have all of you here at the Foreign Correspondence Club. And please join us after this for a little tea, coffee and snacks outside. Thank you.
Facebook Live is being watched by 2,000 people, not just our members, but other parts of the world. Thank you.